Hi, I'm Jodine Sher of Lifeology, helping you get unstuck in any aspect of life as a self awareness coach. And very often people ask me, what's the process? How does your coaching work? And I can explain for ages. But I had a moment with my business partner where he pointed out something within my responses and behaviors that were coming from low self esteem. And instead of going through the process by myself, which I usually do behind the scenes, either with my business partner, Greg, or with my dear friend, Di, who I do the Unstuck Club podcast with, I decided to record the process and show you how I use, first of all, my own tools. I use Lifeology's tools because they've been created actually through what we have needed to make sure that we are giving the best that we possibly can to anyone who is stuck along the way. So I decided to be brave and vulnerable and press record with Di and myself. And along the way, just stop and pause and give you some insight into the understanding of what we're doing. But if you weren't around, this is the process that Di and I would do to help each other get unstuck. So I am sharing with you a realization pointed out by my business partner and the journey through our self awareness tools on what it takes to get unstuck. Enjoy the process. I decided to approach you, Di, to be vulnerable and say, there's something I need to figure out. Let's record it and see whether we're going to share it with the world. Okay. And this
Okay.
is what I told you. So this is what I told you. I said to you, my incredible, very patient bestie, who's my business partner as well. So we share everything. I sent him his um, questions, which we're going to have a look at with from his personality profile. And there was quite a big error in it, right? And he was like, at least I know myself well enough. And I said to him, this anxiety kicks in when I send you stuff, like for sure. Because this doesn't happen when I do this with clients. Like when I send Greg stuff, there's for some reason always something to edit or to correct. And he was like, maybe you're trying to prove yourself to me. There's definitely something low esteem. Um, uh, and what I love about this, Greg and myself together as a team, and you, Di, that's why we all work so well together, is that intuition is entwined into our coaching guidance, whatever we do. I mean, Greg's a change management specialist and he brings his intuition into that. So we got to the place in the conversation where it was my life theme of expression, and we'll explain all the details as we go along, but I have to get to the story. My life theme of expression, right? How I express myself into the world. I then get hold of you and I repeat the story and I say it only happens when I present stuff to Greg. This morning I had a client, and it's a dear client of ours who watches all of our Unstuck Club podcast. She's in our Unstuck Club group on Facebook. So she knows my vulnerability and how I share and everything that we do together. And we were going through her personality profile. Di, there were two places in her profile where I had not even put the information in. I hadn't put the information in. So I said to her, okay, just pause because I need to explain to you what I plan to do after this. And I told her about this session that you and I are going to do and how I was like, it only happens with my business partner. It never happens with clients. And there, Madam Universe made sure all the alignment was there because I now have to admit to myself that for whatever reason, and this is why you and I are doing this together, for whatever reason, with all the passion that I have for everything that I do, there's some reason why I don't go back in. I don't I don't check, I don't triple check. And it's amazing because she asked me in a technique that she does, which I have forgotten, but she said there's always two questions. And the one is, am I arrogant enough to think that I got it right the first time? Or the other question is, am I in too much of a hurry that I haven't gotten it right? Um, and she was amazing. Uh, but here I am with a totally different energy because I was going to start off and say, why do I only do it with Greg? Why doesn't it happen everywhere else? And now I can actually see that it is maybe everywhere.
Oh, okay. I wouldn't say everywhere. What comes to mind is it is a certain type of personality or someone that you have um, perceptions about. It's like it's almost like I have to get this right with this person, and then you do the complete opposite.
So,
So I think it's more
um,
about the type of person or who- where they are in your life. That's kind of what my feeling is.
this is why I'm so happy that we're recording because and this is what I said to the client. So at the same time, we're going to add some
Mm,
explaining things because it is an opportunity for us to show how the self-awareness coaching works, and then how
yeah.
it led into, because you're going to tell me in the blueprint that you're going to work on with me
Mm,
where we're going to work into, right?
mm, mm,
So we are this beautiful cocktail of 12 different um, archetypes that we all have. And when we put this cocktail together, that's how my personality is unique to your personality,
mm,
right? And one of the cocktail of archetypes is called the architect. And so we all have a little bit. Maybe someone else doesn't have a lot, but this my client has a lot of the architect. And the architect, just so that everybody knows, I have a coaching handbook because I cannot remember every single aspect of every single archetype.
yeah.
That helps me to spark. So I'm looking at some of the traits of the architect, and hers is that she is very focused. She's very reliable. Everything's neat, tidy, organized. So when it was wrong, like if you imagine an architect goes into the detail to like have the
Mm,
perfect plan, right?
mm,
I
mm,
literally said, of course it happens with you, the architect, who picks up all the tiny little details along the way.
yeah. Yeah.
And so thank you for saying that, because maybe it is a personality type or a situation. And
Or
that's
an
what
or
we look.
yeah. Or an archetype, that and it just puts added pressure on you. Like I have to get this absolutely right. And then stress kicks in, and
Mm,
then you have an oversight, or
yeah.
yeah, or something. There's something in it that triggers something in you, and it's something to do with the way that person shows up. Or and it is that, like, really wanting to show how good you are. And I don't believe that you hurry these at all. And I
Oh,
also don't believe that you're arrogant enough to think you don't have to go back and check it. There's something with this specific, I think
okay.
it's the archetype. You kind
Yeah.
of know they're going to go through it with a fine tooth comb. And
So,
it's, yeah,
this is the first opportunity now to, I'm going to open up and I'm going to share. So how the coaching works is that we create the 38 facets of your personality, and I have the 38 facets of mine, and we're working through
mm,
yours. And what I love about you and I is that we don't just expect other people to do this work and think that we have it all sorted.
yeah,
And the other thing is that we use our tools that we gift other people
yeah,
with on ourselves, which is so
yeah.
important. So I'm going to share. so that we get the first look. And I'm actually going to share our screen so that we can jump in between um, as we go along. And this isn't supposed to be neat and tidy, it's supposed to be messy as we go. So, what we do know is that it is my place of self expression. So, I am I love what I do. So, it is absolutely a part of my creative pursuit. It's also such a part of my fulfillment, right? And you watched me. I mean, I came to you and I sat on the couch for what, like 10 days solid
Mm.
to
Yeah.
create this personality profile. So I'm so, so very proud of it. Absolutely proud of it. And this is the place where potential success sits, where we can figure out what do I want to express? And then how do I take what I want to express? Is it just a hobby or is it genuinely a part of my big success, right?
Yeah.
And what's interesting about it is the place where we are supposed to honor our inner child. So it's not where the inner child wound is, but it's where we're supposed to honor the inner child.
Okay.
Um, which so let's have a look because the archetype that I have there is the archetype of the performer. Okay, so when when we look at the confident side of my performer, it there is supposed to be this effort. I mean, look at this, and this is what I just want to take a step back and say. Intuitively, Greg said to me, "Joe, please go and have a look at your life theme of expression." Okay. Also, I didn't look at this. I haven't looked at the. I mean, I know that I created the questions, but I haven't looked at it personally. So as we go through, we're going to see what comes up. But it literally says here when I am confident, it's an effortless commander of attention and admiration, right?
Mm.
Shining in the spotlight with my natural charisma. And what happens is I just feel like now the attention's on me, especially when I'm either with my business partner having a meeting, and then today I was with a client, so the attention was on me. They both admire me, and now I'm in the spotlight, and then I just feel like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't even be in the spotlight.
So is that your ego that then comes in and goes,
Yeah,
don't get too big for your boots, is what comes to mind. So that's when you make the
yeah.
mistake.
So that's what I'm assuming because I genuinely don't know. Like I
Because
genuinely don't know
it still has something to do with these
types of people.
types of people or who have that archetype that you know you're going to be under the microscope in some way. And then that brings in the self doubt and the
Mm.
insecurity. And somehow it's like a self sabotage. And then the ego can go, you see, you're not as clever as you thought you were.
So what's interesting is when I wrote my first novel, I went on a journey with a friend of mine, and it was experimental for her and experimental for me because I tried to find a publisher and I really couldn't. And I absolutely love the novel, so we decided to self-publish, right? And we put it out there, and only after it was out there, like on Amazon, for the world to see, did I start noticing errors, but then actually other people started to notice errors, quite a few. And when it comes to the performer, um, the last thing that the performer wants in any way is for to be standing in the spotlight and then to feel that degree of humiliation in any kind of way. And I've really struggled to write since then. I mean, you've seen that. It's like such a drama. Think if I tell anyone once again, I'm still working on this, I'm still working on this book. Like, I don't think even anyone even believes me anymore. Which I also feel maybe it sparked it into something bigger, but I feel like what I did is I've kind of now just spread it. I've spread it. And now there's kind of like this general concern that I'm not. Can you see over here the low esteem, like this
Mm,
insecurity?
yeah. I can.
And then also this avoidant. I mean, I think I've become avoidant to go back because I skim through, and in my head I am convinced that I've double checked and it's good enough. So when these errors come up, I'm actually quite shocked. Actually quite shocked. I'm like, how did that even slip in? Like, it shouldn't have slipped in. But this avoidant is a big
So,
word that's standing out for me.
what's well, I noticed that it's there twice, so it clearly is a big thing for you.
You see, so there's even an error right here. Die. Now I'm making my little note to correct this for the whole
Yeah,
world
but
to
the
see.
thing is, I think again, it is just ego that is coming in. It's like that comparison monster and the inner critic that just wants to keep you in your place. And I wonder if this doesn't also happen when you reach that point of like, that things are about to really open up. We all have this dream of where we see ourselves or our business or our work. And when it starts getting closer and closer, I'm wondering if part of us, that little me, just goes into complete panic mode and then starts throwing these things to trip us up. I mean, yes, it would be wonderful as if everything was perfect, but we don't live in a world where
Mm.
everything is
Yeah,
perfect.
I definitely I definitely don't sit and like take the time to go, like, I just sent you an email now, and I had had all of this happen,
Mm.
and I I was like, read through the email before you press send to die, and I was like, I watched myself type, uh, I'm fine, and sent it without reading through the email.
Okay.
Should we have a look at the questions and see
Yeah. Yeah.
what sparks?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, so how do my choices in making time for my activities, hobbies, and creative pursuits reflect my pride in my self-expression? So this is interesting because I am so proud of what I do.
Mm.
So proud of what I do. And actually, when we look at the confident trait, like the confident traits of the performer, I am very confident to say I'm a fantastic writer.
Mm.
I'm a brilliant coach. Um, so it's absolutely there. It's absolutely there. Uh, and then what happens is I you've watched me do this. I create and then I recreate and then I recreate. Like I keep on getting stuck in creativity. So I always feel like I'm creating. Um, instead of like just narrowing the focus in on what do I now need to put out and present to the world.
Mm.
So I always feel like I'm busy. I always feel like I'm busy. Uh,
Do you think that one of the things that might stop you going back to look at your work or your writing is that you're scared that you'll look at it and go, oh, but I don't like the way this is. I need to change it again.
um, so this is how it works this is how it works, right? Immediately a thought came to me, and the thought is that um, I really grew up. I mean, I will always love my dad. So this is not me knocking him down, but he did find fault, and I'll never forget. I wrote a children's book, which I actually never published. Um, and it was a children's book for adults, and it's just such a it was such a big dream of mine to write children's books for adults to get them to understand these different levels of stuff. And I've written three, and it's another example of what's sitting there. I was so proud of it, and I gave it to him, and he found errors immediately. like absolutely immediately. And he was the kind of dad who was like, when you told him something or showed him something, he was like, well, what happened to the extra 2%? Not because he wanted us to be perfect, but because um, in whatever it was, his way of finding fault in other things most probably just made him feel better for whatever was lacking. So there is a part of me that um, obviously I never looked at the questions, and we did it because I wanted to watch the realizations come up. That's why we chose to do this. But there is a part of me that then kind of went, um, someone else will pick up the errors I'm just meant to write, and someone else will pick up the errors.
Okay. Is there is there anything in these two specific people who kind of trigger that memory? Is it an attitude or the way they say things that suddenly, because that's quite a big thing. And I say that because I know I've had with my own dad, and like I feel inadequate. I never feel that what I do is enough. And it's been a really, especially over the last couple of weeks when this realization came up. And I think, though, that kind of thing really, I think it does have an impact. There's a part of you, like, you have pride in your self expression, but there's a yes, but. Yes, it's great, but you didn't do this right. Instead of just going, fantastic effort, you were a child, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
Um, so I wonder if there's not something in your interactions with them that,
Well,
and it could be something really small. I'm not saying they're
yeah,
like your dad, and I
yeah,
know, neither of them criticize you in that way, but maybe there is just something that is triggering this, and
yes.
then you make a mistake, and it's like, oh, there I go again. Like, I just can't get this right.
So it's interesting because it's definitely, and the exact words are gain respect.
Mm, yeah.
And I actually said to Greg, I'd love for him to be on our Unstuck Club podcast, because when Greg met me, his perception of me was, I mean, actually, it's amazing because here in the low esteem dramatic, if you ask Greg when he met me what was his perception of me, he will say dramatic, absolutely. And he will also most probably say, it wasn't submissive. I was completely over the top. Like I just, I was trying to like really prove myself. So I think I took some of these like entertaining. I was ridiculously entertaining where actually Greg was like, you were embarrassing yourself.
So it's
That
like
was,
approval seeking or trying to
yeah,
fit in. Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, this client and myself, we have a beautiful, uh, ever growing bond and understanding with each other. And when we initially started, she came in and she was like, I am very knowledgeable. And she's done self-awareness work for such a long time. So it's approval really feels like quite a thing. And
Mm.
then now for you and I to be so brave to do something like this and share it with the world, like uncut. I
Yeah.
can't go in and edit that avoided is here twice, which is
Yeah.
once again we're creating this content for the world because once again it is a form of approval. Like, look at me um as this coach and guide and support, and it feels like it's linked into approval, which is something that which is quite a big thing.
Yeah. It is.
So um we work with the process of the triggers, right?
Yeah.
So I just want to zoom out. So this is a really important thing for us to just sit with for a second, because whenever we're doing the coaching, and this is where you and I link together so perfectly, Di, once
Mm.
I understand the triggers, I get hold of you because our clients um, are the same people and we want them to be the same people because I can only do so much. So I
Yeah.
actually pause for you to say how we link together, also because I want to hear it for myself as you stepping in and saying what I'm
So
going to need from
oh,
you.
so you mean, yeah, the stuff that I do with you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it really is working. So there's two aspects. There's working with the custodians if
Mhm.
they need, and I always do a check-in before I start working, do the session with a person. Is there a custodian that we need to work on? Um, or it can be the energetic blueprint. So the energetic blueprint is what you're born with, and it holds your soul essence and it holds your soul purpose. And I think that's sometimes where people trip themselves up. They're like, oh, I need to know my soul purpose or my life purpose, and then my life will be perfect. Your soul purpose could be to come into this lifetime and be an amazing mother. It could be just that you show kindness to everyone you meet and you make them feel a bit better for 5 minutes. Your purpose does not have to be this huge, bells and whistles thing. It is for some people, but not for everyone. So I'll either work with the custodians if they are blocking your growth, um, or I will work with the energetic blueprint. So the blueprint, because of life circumstances, can become frayed, it can become fragile, it can become corrupted. Um, the blueprint also sits in all of your chakras. That it can start breaking away from the chakra. So then think of it as an energetic grid around the body. And I work with that to strengthen it and to bring it back into alignment with
Mm.
where you are now and whatever it is that you are working on. So in terms of our work together, those are the two aspects that
Okay.
I work on in the energy work.
And then what happens is, which is what you and I are going to do together for me now, is when I do this with clients and then I pick up which custodian, and custodians are the those chattering voices within our mind that have specifically witnessed everything we have been through in our lives and don't want us to repeat mistakes, right? So they are protecting us from different
Mm,
steps that we would need to take, although the steps would be brave to take, these custodians are almost like bodyguards saying the world is unsafe, don't go there. And me through the cognitive working, processing, all of the journaling and everything, we want to understand on a mental and into the emotional level. And then you want to energetically help everything
mm,
align, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
what's important for me in the processing is that we understand the triggers. It's always based on triggers. So once
yeah,
I know a trigger, I'll get hold of you and say to you, with our common client, this is the trigger for you then
yeah.
to go in and
To go into, yeah, yeah.
so let's figure out my trigger, right?
Mm,
So every custodian, we are always worried or concerned that we're not going to feel worthy, we're not brave enough to do what needs to be done, or we don't trust ourselves, the universe, the process, someone else, or we are avoiding change. It always falls into one of those
mm,
four. Okay. All right. So when I have a look at the triggers, um, and we're just gonna scribble down as it comes along, right? Um, I I must admit um, that humiliation is a big one, and humiliation is a big one.
okay.
It is one that just stands out. No, I don't feel belittled, and no one ever makes me feel belittled, actually, and I don't
Mm,
belittle myself.
mm,
Um, Defeated also does show up, although I never stop. Like I've never stopped writing. It hasn't stopped me from writing. It doesn't make me, so maybe not defeated, right?
Yeah, when I look, I sort of go between the survivor and the transformer.
So let's have a look at the transformer. Criticized, rejected, compared.
Not, I mean, not abused, but certainly criticized, possibly. And then you do go into resistance
So what's
and then
interesting,
and
what's
procrastination.
yeah. So what's so interesting for me is that and I have presented Greg with a lot of stuff that makes no sense. His patience with me is like next level. And and the client didn't flinch. And I mean, you read my novel Euphenia. You
Mm.
read the botched up version. I don't know what else to call it, right? And you were so I remember you being so gentle. I remember you saying, "Yes, I noticed a few errors along the way,"
Yeah.
you know? So, um, I never feel this from other people.
o-
Never feel this from other people.
Okay. Okay. No, well then I would go back to survivor.
Yeah, because I don't feel there's no abandoned, lost, scared, or helpless
No,
at in
no.
the process.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, there's also no, I mean, disappointed in myself, but
But not
actually,
from, yeah, no. Yeah, I think, look, and you do go into blame. You blame yourself. And you do withdraw. And yeah, there is self-pity. And the nice thing is it doesn't stay for very long now. Like you're away, you've got a really good handle on it. Like you'll reach out, as we all should when we go into those spaces, is yes, feel what you're feeling, but then find a support system that can go, well, that's not who you are, and yes, it is a mistake, but we all make mistakes. I mean, I read a book the other day by a fairly well-known author, and um, there were a couple of grammatical errors. I was like, "Oh, okay, the proofreader didn't do their job properly."
and I'm doing my Dutch visa at the moment, and this global international website invitation is spelt wrong on the
Yeah,
visa application for the Netherlands.
yeah. So I think and there are people in this world who absolutely relish finding the mistakes and letting whoever did it know. But you know, what would you rather do? Have it wait until it's perfect before you put it out, or deal with the errors
Yeah,
as
yeah.
they come?
So the irrational mind definitely goes to a place of neglect. I neglect the
Yeah,
detail. So I
yeah.
neglect the detail. Okay, so that's rash. So now this is so important because now what we got to do is we got to where does the rational mind need to go?
Mm,
Okay. And I'm so happy that I had the moment with you with the email before because what stands out for me is the perseverance. Because a part of me said, read it through, right? And then the irrational mind just went right back into that neglect.
mm.
So the key word for me, where I need to pull my rational mind to, is perseverance.
Yeah.
Okay, now that we understand that, now what we want to know is where when I don't want to do that, what part of myself do I need to what do I need to remind myself of in order to stay in that space? Because there might be an arrogance that says I don't need to reread it. There could definitely be an avoidance or an insecurity to just, you know, avoid it because avoidance is there twice, right? The big thing now is to find out where do I go? Where do I go? And what I want to do with that is So one thing between you and me is there's never guesswork with our clients, right?
Mm.
We have these tools.
Yeah.
And when I go into the questions, here we go. This is the question. Which confident responses and behavior give me insight into why my expression is aligned with my personality? So that's what we're looking for. What confident traits, what is aligned with my personality? Because these, this, now, this avoidant neglect is not a part of my personality.
Mm.
It's really not.
Mhm.
So so now we're looking for the confident words that stop the custodian, that custodian of worthiness, from that irrational mind knee jerk response of neglect. So the perseverance sits in, and that's what we're going to look at now, right?
Mm.
Um, and what does two words jump up at me,
Okay, you tell me yours and I'll tell
and
you
then
mine.
okay. Everything that I have done has a creative edge that doesn't touch anybody else.
Yeah.
Okay. So usually what I'm doing is I'm writing down for clients and then so now I'm just quickly writing
Mm.
down
Yeah.
for myself. Um, and I love what I said, because can you now hear the performer? Because the performer is saying creative edge that does not touch anybody else. So that
Mm.
is my own admiration and
Yeah.
my willingness to shine into the spotlight. And it also, I am so passionate about what I do.
Yeah.
I am so passionate about what I do. When I talk about writing the second novel, I mean, you see me sparkle and shine, and then
Mm.
I just go into neglect, and I never get to it. So for me, the two that really stand out is creative and passionate.
Okay. So the ones for me, the first one is determined because you are, since you started on this journey, you're absolutely determined to distill it down to a workable process because it was very big in the beginning and in some places unwieldy. And you've just continually worked at it and refined it so that it is, so that the clients, it's easier for them to understand. So you've been absolutely determined in that process. And the other one is bold. I think, this work is so different from everything else that is out there. And you never have been afraid of putting yourself out there. Yes, there have been times when you've kind of listened to other people's opinions, but you've always come back to your own authentic path.
Thank you for saying bold, because um I was very uncomfortable as you said bold. And so there's something that I've wanted to do, and it's interesting because a friend of mine sent me something, so I want to share, because now I want to show you where the boldness gets stuck, so we can have a look. So, um, I am a really, really proud Taylor Swift fan. Okay, and what I had decided to do is merge my self awareness coaching with her new album that I'm telling you she wrote for all of us to heal. And I've spoken to you about it, and I've said I
Mm,
want to do
mm,
a podcast. I want to have these different things where we go through each song, and I want to say to people, which song do you relate to? And then have podcasts around Smallest Man That Ever Lived, or The Bolter, or whatever the songs are. And I've told a couple of friends, everyone thinks it's such a good idea. This friend of mine yesterday sent me, someone has written an article and taken the Enneagram and broken the Enneagram down into the Taylor Swift songs.
okay. Interesting.
And I sit and I go, you wanted to do that. You wanted to do that. Why did you neglect it? Because now we know my word, right? So now
Mm,
we know my
mm,
irrational
mm.
mind word.
Yeah.
Why did
Why
you
did
neglect?
you why did you wait so long? Yeah.
Yeah. And you say bold, and there's a part of me that goes, and this is very important statement for me to say. my thoughts are bold. I'm bold in my thoughts
Mm.
to actually have the perseverance to bring it into reality. That's when I think I don't grab the spotlight.
Yeah, then you go into the self-doubt and the insecurity, and the avoiding.
Yeah. And actually, when we look at the low esteem over here, you feel unnoticed or
Mm,
overlooked, lacking
mm,
confidence in your
mm.
ability. I actually feel like I set myself up to be unnoticed and overlooked. Because if I jumped on it and ran with it, I wouldn't be overlooked.
Exactly.
So now we jump to a process called flow, right? Now that we know this, we jump to a process called flow. And flow is, now that we have this consciousness, there's going to be work for me to do and work for you and me to do together, right, Di? So I'm going to make
Mm.
it bigger. So when people talk about flow, actually what flow is having all of the cogs moving. It's not sitting down and waiting for life to happen, right? And
Yeah.
saying, "Oh, I'm in flow." It is these four steps that now we're going to navigate for me to take. So with everything that I've spoken about, and we know that in the acronym of flow, the first part is forgiveness. In order to set myself free from this, I need to have a look at what forgiveness needs to be done. Is it forgiveness of others or is it forgiveness of myself? I and once again in the vulnerability, we had time because we knew that my dad was sick, and so I had time to deal with a lot of stuff because there was a time frame. He was sick, and this sickness was slowly taking him away from us. And I actually decided to do a level of therapy to be in a good relationship with my dad by the time he passed away. um, and I and a lot of the stuff that did come up was this always finding fault, always finding fault
Mm.
the whole time. Obviously, because this is so vulnerable, family traits also, just the blueprint of family traits gets passed on,
Yeah.
and my um my siblings kind of sort of continue to do that with me, not intentionally,
Okay.
um, but I now that I sit here and think about it, there is it's in different kinds of ways, and my siblings often tell me I'm overly sensitive, and when I get something wrong, I actually get really upset that I get something wrong. So I feel, yeah, I needed to say that. I need a bit of guidance and help from you with the forgiveness and also
Yeah.
to just to forgive myself. I mean, for goodness sake, I wrote such a beautiful book and I launched into a very brave and bold process of putting that book out into the world. And there were errors, and I don't feel like I have forgiven myself enough for that.
I think in the custodians, one of the words is kindness, and I kept thinking like you need to be kinder to yourself. I think it is in the custodian of worthiness is show yourself a little bit of kindness. You're doing, we're both doing
Yeah.
things that other people talk about and dream of and don't even take the first step. Um, so I think, yeah, I think is, when these thoughts come up, is like, I can be a little kinder to myself. Whatever happened to you as a child, it's not who you are now. Um, so, yeah, kindness is a big one as well.
Okay. And I can feel the emotion kicking in when you said
Mm,
kind.
mm.
All right. So now we have to the from love to loyalty is so interesting because this is about um loyalty to yourself. This is about self-love.
Yeah.
Really about self-love. Um, and it's your own triggers of abandoning yourself or feeling lost within yourself or feeling scared like within yourself. And although I have the resilience because of the performer, which I'm so grateful for, and just a reminder that there are 12 archetypes and the performer governs this particular aspect within myself. This is where I feel I abandon the project or abandon, whatever it is. And it's interesting that it's about releasing the expectations. Um,
Yes.
and I can be very hard on myself with expectations. Okay, release the expectation. So now this is, it's so interesting to be on the other side of it. I know you and I do this, but when we look at openness, openness is what I say to people when The Secret and everything came out and everyone was creating vision boards and all that kind of stuff. Actually, this when we say, okay, what do I want to do or what do I want to create? This is where the openness sits. So we've if you haven't, you don't know that these two first steps are important and you dive straight into openness, this is a lot of times when the chaos can come along.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because what this is to create an opportunity to do something different. And this is an interesting part of the coaching and the dynamic. And usually, what I'm doing is now, Di, I'm getting hold of you and I'm saying, this is everything that we've worked out about the client, and the client is now open to doing this something different.
Yeah.
Um, which I can feel now on the other side of it is can really be overwhelming, right? Because now it's for you and me to decide for me to do what do I do different.
What do you do different? Yeah.
Um, and the one is definitely, I feel, to specifically make time to, so in the time that I set up to create the documents for the clients or do the emails or whatever it is, and it comes into this word of perseverance, is I've got to reread my work.
Yeah.
Are you fine to reread your work?
Um, yeah, listen, when I do a reading, I mean, I'll go back, but I have two readings I did not so long ago. When I did the feedback with a client, I noticed that I never put in my overview. There's the heading, overview of reading, and it's blank. And I was like, but they didn't seem to notice. But I was horrified that I forgot to just do my own personal overview, which I then gave them in the session. But now I make absolutely sure that I haven't missed anything. It really
So,
gave me a wake up
so
call.
okay. So, how do you make absolutely sure?
Well, I'd go back. I don't read it word for word. I mean, maybe you can have something like a checklist
Okay.
and make sure that you maybe what you do, because you getting their date and time of birth, and you go, right, this is their um
The points of their
archetypes and where they are. Yeah. And maybe they have that as a one pager that you then refer to, and then at the end you just go back and make sure that each of those ties up with what is, so it's not going back and rereading every single thing, because all that information is the same. It's where it is that is the
yeah,
important thing,
yeah.
that is
I
different.
mean, I just
So
left two
maybe
points.
develop a one pager as a checklist,
Mm.
and just make sure that that
Right.
his in his life, in the life theme expression, it's the archetype is the performer. Yes, it's there, and you just quickly scan and make sure the performer info is where it should be.
And double check.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So my openness is a checklist, right? And it is to just especially when I feel the avoidance, because that's what the
Yeah,
custodians do. When I feel the avoidance of going over something, maybe to let that be the signal to me to not be in that arrogant space and go over
yeah,
it,
yeah,
because it might just be that intuitive part of me that's going, there's an error here and you've
yeah.
missed it. Okay, I like that. Um, and so now the bigger one, Di, is how do I finish the book and the novel that I've been talking about for? I mean, I wrote my first novel 10 years ago,
You
more than 10
just
years.
you just write it. You set time. I mean, if you read anything about any of the really well-known famous authors, they all had the same process. They would sit down, and most of them in those days, in front of their typewriters, and they go from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. I'm going to write. And the one guy, and I can't remember who it is, um, said, even if I sat there for an hour and wrote nothing, I would sit there because I'm creating that environment of writing. He said, or even if I sat there and just wrote the heading and maybe sat and made notes on a piece of paper about my thoughts about what I was going to write. But I think whenever I've done a writing course or on the retreats, they said, make time every day to write and don't cancel it.
Okay.
You know that, and I think it's we're going a bit off track here, but I think it's something that people who work from for themselves struggle with is getting that routine.
Mm,
So, it's like if you know your most creative time of the day is between 9 and 11 in the morning or 2 and 3 in the afternoon, then that has to go like that's what you do. That is my writing time. And you create a ritual where you put, your laptop and maybe you light a candle and you have your favorite mug or cup of tea.
mm,
But I think, Joe, you have to create that discipline, um, and go, I am going to write this. Go, that that in the custodians, that perseverance, that determination, that resilience, like I am going to write. It's like if we don't give space for the writing, it's not going to show up because you're not giving space to it because you're in your head about the previous mistakes or
yeah,
the
yeah,
criticisms. So,
yeah.
I don't want to be that you and I are in our 80s and 90s commiserating because we never did
But it's
the
done.
writing that we knew we were supposed to do.
Yeah, yeah. So what's interesting, because how we do this, when we do the personality profile, is what's come up for me is I um at this moment in time with my nephew getting him through matric, with my sister, like my whole life I've been a caregiver to other people,
Mm.
and actually the last person that gets any time, or the last thing that gets any time, is my writing, and that's what came up. And because we understand this, we know that it's the caregiver archetype. So
Mm.
what would happen now is that in my personality profile, I need to go to the caregiver and I need to have a look at the caregiver and see what the caregiver is doing. And that's how we flow through all 38 of the archetypes, right? Of the you see, it's knocked me so much that I can't even find my words, actually.
So
Um
can you be the caregiver to your writing? If the roof over your head and the food on your table depended on your writing, you would make time for it. But can you extend that caregiving to your writing? It's an integral part of who you are. And it's exactly the same with money. We want money to show up for us and we want it to do all these amazing things. But how are we a steward or a custodian of money? How are we showing up for money? How are you showing up for your writing? Because the first thing you do is you go into criticism.
Yeah.
So writing goes, okay, well, clearly,
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
matter. She's
Mm,
not serious about it. So, how are you showing up for writing? If writing was a person and knocked on your door now, how would you welcome them in? Would you give them the time? Because writing needs time. It's the one thing it does need.
yeah. I love that, and I wrote it down, and I know what you and I are going to do is it's a huge part of the coaching is um this the willingness to actually now do the openness, and my openness is to feel intuitively, to have the checklist, right? To feel
Yeah,
intuitively where the places that I must reread and connect
yeah.
into, and to create this time. And what happens in the this W part of flow, and this is where majority of people get caught up, is because we always have the best intentions for ourselves, right? But we want to figure out what happens, what kicks in where we actually become resistant to the change and resistant to doing something different. And we won't know that until I've given myself some time. So um yeah, I feel like we're going to put this out, and then we're going to come back in what? How long? To see whether I've actually managed
Mm,
to do it, because then we'll see the repeated cycle, and we'll see,
yeah.
did I have the willpower, and how do we go back into this process of flow, and what comes up from that, right?
So, I mean, if I look at openness to opportunity, it says bravely committing to doing one thing differently. So here's what I did because I've been struggling to really get into my work, the changes that I need to make. So I set up an accountability partner. And we have the two of us have a separate group from our normal chat on WhatsApp. And either every night or the first thing in the morning, I commit to her at least one thing I'm going to do around my business. Sometimes it's more than one. It depends on my day and what's in it and if I have clients. And at night, I feed back to her what I did or didn't do. And if she hasn't heard from me by 8 p.m., she messages me and goes, "Hey, you haven't given me your feedback." Just doing that one thing has really changed. I've done videos. I'm working on changing my website. Um, I wanted to do a newsletter. I've really struggled with the words and realized I'm in my head instead of allowing the words to come through my heart. So I said to her yesterday, like, I know I said I was going to do the newsletter, but I'm really struggling. And she said, "Well, don't beat yourself up about it. It will come." But so maybe that is a thing, is like to have an accountability partner and go, this is what I'm going to do today. And yes, life gets in the way, emergencies happen, but just that. So it may be I'm committing to half an hour of writing
Mm,
in the morning. That's it. It doesn't, you don't even have to say what that writing is, but I'm committing to sitting down and getting into that writing space and then feeding back to someone. I didn't just do 30 minutes, I did an hour. I'm so excited, and this flowed and that flowed. I got a huge aha yesterday in the middle of a practice session for time to think around my work. So that's what you can do. But if you don't show up for writing, Joe, it's not going to show up for you.
yeah, which is something I'm so proud of and I love. I'm going to look for an accountability partner, but I'm also going to say, if anyone found this interesting and actually watched the whole thing, because we're going to put the whole thing out, and it's not our usual like half an hour
No,
podcast.
it's not.
Yeah, if someone also needs an accountability partner,
Yeah,
to reach out to me, because I'm
yeah,
now looking for one. Um and I think that that's a great step, the accountability partner,
yeah,
and then yeah, the making the time to write. And I'm so grateful that I mean, this is so, it's so important. We want to understand why the ego mind does what it does, and
Mm.
it's that humiliated, which is just such a big thing, and then how I go into neglect, and then that confident, that conscious rational response is the perseverance to do this. So
I think that's a really important point is when you start to put yourself out there, whatever it is, when it's on a bigger scale, you are opening yourself to criticism.
mm,
That's the way of the world. It's other people's opinions. It doesn't matter. There are nearly 8 billion people on this planet. You are never going to please all of them. And I think it is with that you really have to go, why am I doing this? Am I doing it because I want everyone to like it? Or am I doing this because it's in my heart, it's in my soul? I know I have to get it out there, and I know that there are people who will value it. And I think that is a huge thing because, social media absolutely fuels those monsters, it fuels the ego
yeah.
because we are consistently comparing ourselves to what is out there. You have a unique expression, and this comes through you. It's never going to come through in exactly the same way as it does through you. And yeah, I think it's that humiliation. These are big things to overcome. They're not. This is not
uh,
small stuff. It
Huge.
takes a lot of bravery. What
It,
is that one quote about writing? You have to kill your little darlings. You've got to pull it out, put it out there because someone's going to hate it.
yep.
But and if you let that stop your own authentic expression, you will reach the end of your life and then just be beating yourself up because you allowed other people's opinions to matter.
And it's amazing. It is amazing, and I do have to say it because I know that people sometimes just get frustrated with Swifties, but she was humiliated. Taylor Swift was humiliated, and I'm only putting it together now in the second. And the reason, if someone asks me why do you love her so much, uh, can I continue? I always say she started in country music. I absolutely love country music. I admire how she pushed through and built everything up and didn't let anyone knock her down. But actually, she was so humiliated, and she survived the humiliation. And I don't want to do the same as her and take my humiliation and write it into everything. But that perseverance, I mean, I just want to
Yeah.
look at that perseverance as an such a spark of admiration for me. I really do.
So you can use her. I mean, she is such a big factor in your life. You can use her as your mentor. What would Taylor do?
Oh, what would Taylor do? She'd keep writing. That's what she would
Yeah,
do.
keep writing.
Yeah,
And she's still trashed on social media and has all her haters. You're
yeah.
always going to, when people become successful, there's a portion of the population that loves trying to knock them off those pedestals. You have to get a very thick skin and go, I'm doing what works for me. It's not hurting anybody. It's if people are offended, that's their stuff. I know the first time I started talking about energetic blueprints and soul purposes, I was like, oh, this is so woo woo. It's who I am. I can't separate myself from these knowings that I have about our journey on earth. And it's not easy to suddenly start saying these things publicly.
Well, that's how I want to end this. I want to end this with everything that we've been through. Um, is I'm going to have an energetic blueprint
Hmm.
session with you.
Session. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
for you to just share from everything that you know,
Mm.
like what is that energetic focus going to be? Like, because I would now get hold of you and say to you,
Yeah. Well, I don't know beforehand. I don't know until I connect with the person and go, right, we're going to work on the energetic blueprint and then see what comes up. That's why I give feedback afterwards as to what I see or hear or feel. I mean, for example, I did a session last week on a client who's had a lot of health issues with their stomach. And the moment I connected to him, I know that he's not following his soul path. He is very comfortable where he is, and he's loving it, but it's not where he's supposed to be. This is just a stepping stone, and he's sort of, it's, yeah, it's a comfort zone now. And I
So
worked on that. And then the feedback I got a day or two later was like, for the first time in months, hadn't had stomach pains, because your physical illnesses are an expression of the stuckness, of the overwhelm, of the fear that the body is holding. That's why I'm so passionate about, like, as you open the awareness to people and they can start seeing where they're out of alignment with their personality profile, that I can then energetically start bringing them back into alignment so life can flow for them. So they're not fighting the flow all the time, they're actually going with the flow of their life. Is it always a comfortable process? No, not probably won't be most of the time, because normally we have to change things that, yeah, other
yeah.
people don't like, or, but yeah, so that's what I do. But it's only when I connect to the person. You've
So
given me basic information and I
right.
bring that in and then work with it.
So
Yeah.
I'm feeling like we should reconnect on this, like, um, as we would. So I would give my clients 2 weeks. I would say, let's see
Yeah.
what happens in 2 weeks, and let's
Yeah.
come back and do this on 2 weeks. Like, where's the
And give the
accountability
feedback.
part? Da, 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 da. And you will have done my session in that
Yeah.
time and given the feedback. And
Yeah.
should we do
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. We can do that. Perfect.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you for holding space for me to do this. I always say no man is an island, and
Yeah.
we can only
Absolutely.
see so much of ourselves by
Yeah.
ourselves. The rest
Yeah.
of the time, we do need a coach, a guide, a friend, a support, or whatever. So thank you
Yeah,
for being
we do. Yeah. Yep. Happy to do that.
amazing. And with that, if you listened all the way to the end,
Yes. Well done.
okay, take
Okay.
care. Bye.
Bye.